live on YouTube.
Well, and then we can start the webinar. Here, the webinar is now live. And welcome to our 28th Gutenberg Live Q&A on this June 24th. My name is Birgit Pauli-Haag, and I'm your host for today's discussion. Thank you all for watching, and it's great to have you. And while you all come in, use the chat window to tell us where you are and where you're watching from. And today we will discuss a new way to configure themes, that is block themes, with global styles and settings file Theme.json. And it will enable theme developers to centralize all their block-based settings, color palettes, font sizes, and other block-based customizations. This way, you will also control which of the other block features the theme supports or does not support. So that's my simple mind's description of the new features. And I'm so thrilled to have three experts on the show to go beyond this simple explanation and help theme developers to get started. I'm extremely honored to have Daisy Olson, developer advocate at Automatic and WordPress contributor. Hey, good to have you. Also, Jeff Ong, code wrangler at Automatic. Thanks for being here. And at last but not at least, Tammie Lister, design lead at Extendify.
Hello.
We'll do some proper introduction in less than a minute. I just have a few housekeeping notes. So after their introduction, we'll have a first round robin question. And then we see a demo. Jeff was working really hard on it, and I think it was the only one preparing hard for this live Q&A. And then we'll discuss the different angles and how to get started, and then, of course, answer your question. Speaking of questions, you pose your question. How do you pose your question? There's a Q&A on the bottom of the screen. A kind of icon, you click on that and write your question. And for those watching on YouTube, use the chat window next to the video player. And so I'm saying hi. Hi, Victor, from Buenos Aires in Argentina. Awesome. Thank you for being here. All right. When you do comments and questions, so please be kind, even if you disagree. This is a family endeavor. All right. Well, I'm thrilled you all agreed, dear panelists, to come on the show, and I get an hour to talking with you about your work. So, Daisy, tell us a little bit about you, where you're located, and what is it that you do as developer advocate on the WordPress project and at Automatic.
Yeah, so I'm Daisy Olson, and I live in New Hampshire in the United States. It's a beautiful day here right now, unlike some parts of this country that are really hot. We got the cool weather over here this week. So yeah, so as a developer advocate, I talk about WordPress a lot. I get out and do workshops and teach classes and write documentation and just stay involved and close to the project's development so that I know what's going on theoretically and can share that out with particularly with plugin and theme developers, as well as agencies and freelancers and things like that.
Awesome. Awesome. So glad you're here. Thank you. So Tammie, thank you for coming back to the show. It's been over 3 years. The last time you were on the show was just after Gutenberg was merged into Core, and you were one of the 3 leads with Matthias Ventura and Johan Asmussen. And you shared a lot about the journey of Gutenberg and the philosophy behind it. So I will put the show to that, the link to the show into the show notes for you who have been coming later to Gutenberg. So, and this year, but this year you joined the WordPress product company, Extendify. So what do you do there?
First of all, has it been 3 years? That goodness. Time flies. So at Sendify, I focus on design. So our solutions extend the editor, and then what the aim is to make it even more usable for people's purpose that they want to use it for. And I'm really, really excited about that. So it means that people can have the best experience from what their content they're creating to the layout, their patterns, their styles, whatever that the editor enables. That's really what I'm focusing on. So it's an interesting new challenge to do. And you have blown my brain with that time span. You really have. That's awesome.
Well, it's also 3 years that, well, over 3 years that Gutenberg Times is. So I've been part of that journey for so long. And nothing really held my attention for so long. Normally I get really bored, but yeah. So, well, I'm also really happy that Extendify took over Editor Plus from Munir Kamal, and all the big and the editor's kit from Jeffrey Carandang. Yeah, so those have a more sustainable way now to exist, because both Munir and Jeffrey seem to have Munir joined you, but Jeffrey have moved on to be a consultant at I think PenUp.
Yeah. So it's all really exciting. So,
yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
Cool.
So thank you also to Jeff Ong for joining us today as well. You're Code Ranger and Automatic, and what have you been working on lately except for the demo? I know about that.
Well, first, thank you for having me and hosting this. Awesome to be here. Feel very honored to be with 3 on-time contributors. So it's super cool. I've been working on theme development, pretty solely focused on that for the last year. And my background is not in WordPress. So it's kind of been an interesting journey to transition and learn about the ecosystem and really figure out, coming at a transitory time, figuring out how do we kind of move into this new block-based paradigm. How do we make themes that work with the block editor really well and can hopefully unlock more creativity, more, just really great design and compelling websites again. So, making new themes and figuring out how to do that with the latest version of Gutenberg, which changes.
Well, awesome.
Turns out every day.
Yeah. So, dear viewers, follow Jeff Ong. He's gonna teach you how to do things with the block editor, and we will soon see a little demo of that. It's what Daisy said. Okay, what you did in 5 minutes, I taught a course on in 3 hours. So it's going to be a little fast paced today. So, but before we head into medias res, I would like to ask each of you, so what do you think will change most for the theme developers when building themes, either for agency building custom themes for their clients, or for themed shops rolling out new themes to sell? Do you want to start, Tammie?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think perhaps it's a change if you want it to be a change, because lots of this is an opt-in, as is the way with WordPress, the WordPress way of opt-in. I go back to a lot of times that this is a freeing of themes, and I think it brings an opportunity that has pros and cons, ups and downs with opportunities, but they no longer, themes no longer have to pretend that they're plugins, and they no longer have to be everything and have to be things that they weren't intended to be in the first. So I think that is a challenge in itself, because there's a certain way that you maybe thought you had to do things, and now you don't have to work around things. We often have to work around things in WordPress, and if you don't have to work around it, it can feel a little bit peculiar. But once you realize you don't have to do that, it's actually really awesome. But you have to realize you don't have to, and that WordPress was getting in the way. I also think as a result, there's going to be a space for more creativity, and this can also be really challenging, because maybe you were limited to what you could do creativity wise because of just the confinements of the space and the confinements of what you could do before. And it's going to open themes again to a lot more people, and a lot more people who maybe didn't have access to a theme developer with the experience who knew the exact ins and outs of it. So I think that's a challenge, because new people in the space, new creativity. But honestly, I think it's a good thing. It's just, if you want to and you're open to it, and you can kind of explore those new ways. But I don't think it's a change that you have to make. I think that's the thing.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Daisy, what do you think?
So I think I would agree with Tammie that the barrier of entry for a new theme designer, and I think that's one of the key things, is it's bringing the design back to theming. Theming over time became very functional. You know, we had a lot of theme companies that were trying to make their themes as flexible and powerful as and featureful as possible to reach a wide variety of people. And I think that we can see some opportunity for vertically oriented designs coming out, where you have a theme that is geared towards a restaurant, or geared towards I don't know, a salon, or a certain kind of a business, or even a personal site. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to be able to have a lot of variety out there in the marketplace, so that when someone asks the inevitable question, because this was probably the most common question when I was working for a theme company, is which theme is best for this? I'm doing this kind of a site, which theme should I use? And it could make it so like, well, here are 5 that are really geared towards what you're trying to do, instead of, oh, you can use any of them. You just have to do all this work to get it to look right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, thank you. Jeff?
Definitely from a design perspective, it's super exciting. I want to highlight maybe a little bit more from the development side. This seems like the biggest opportunity, or clearest opportunity, to ensure that your theme is integrated with the editor, that the things that you're doing with the editor and your ability to customize it, to control what presets and options are available there to the users of the theme. This is seems to me the clearest, and it's like a unifying kind of idea and single point of truth. Talking about Theme.json, and even just this whole concept of how do we bring this experience together. I think we have an opportunity to do that, and that's going to change even in some small levels. Even if your Theme.json file just is a few settings, like it can be, you can take it slow, like Tammie is saying, incorporate parts of it. Because to me, you have this new contract now that can really unify things and bring things together from a lot of disparate parts and pieces.
Yeah, lots to think about. And I agree with all of you. I had this pleasure last year that I took over themes from agencies, and they were so powerful. And yeah, all the things that normally a plugin would do, custom post types and widgets and all that, yeah, it's all in one place, and we won't be able to change a theme at all. Yeah, so now this is definitely going to make life a lot easier for site owners as well. Yeah. So lots to think about, and listening to you is quite inspiring to kind of think, oh, well, and how many directions can my brain go now? And so, but Jeff, are you ready for your demo? It would be, I think it would be helpful for all the people here on the call to
Sure.
see what it's all about, and how it kind of gets started.
Yes, we have 10 minutes roughly. Yes. Can you see my screen?
We can see your
Awesome.
screen, yes.
So we have a blank theme here, and I just want to kind of go over some of, not going to cover everything, but some of the key parts that Theme.json introduces, and show how that impacts a blank theme and also the editor. So hopping over to my code editor, I have my Theme.json here. This is a really just basic, simple theme, nothing going on yet. In here, I'm going to go ahead. The first thing I want to talk about are the settings of your Theme.json. Settings are kind of what control or give you the ability to configure the editor and what kind of customization options are present to the user and the theme. The only thing I have right now is the layout, which we'll get to in a second. But let's say I want to add some color options here. Previously, this would be done in the functions PHP. I have kind of a cheat sheet over here. Sorry, I need to hide these meeting controls. I'm going to copy a color palette from this. I'm going to set a palette that's going to become available to me in my theme. I go to edit the same post. And here I see my corn silk, my orange red, and my cornflower blue that's become available to me. I think before, what's pretty interesting about this is before you would have had to kind of go into functions, add this whole palette, and then also define the class name, something like this, to actually apply those styles. Let's say, okay, I want this heading to be orange, update it, show it here. I get all this cool stuff for free. This class was generated for me by Gutenberg using this preset that I have defined these meeting controls through defined here in my palette option. Another cool thing, or interesting about the possibilities here is within the same configuration. I say, okay, I'm the theme designer. I don't want people. I have the option right now to change the color to kind of anything I want. The powerful thing about Theme.json at this time is you can actually turn something like this off. I actually don't want people to, or my users, to be able to change anything, change the color palette. So let's go ahead and reset this back here. Turned off custom colors within Theme.json. And then back here, you'll see that option has disappeared. So inaccessible color combinations or just color combinations that you don't want to be available, you can turn that off. This is just one of the options that are available. Color is just one of the options that you can customize. You can also take a look at something like typography. I think I can apply some font sizes here. So be over some font sizes. Refresh. And I can see now that those presets were available, are now available to me. I can do the same thing again here too, say I don't actually want people to be able to change font size here. Because as the designer, I know what's best, and I don't want people putting in random custom font sizes. So disable that. And now only my presets are available to. By the way, this content is just kind of some standard block pattern content. Again, I'm getting all of this kind of for free, or for free in a way, by just applying some preset values here. Cool. I think the next thing that I wanted to cover is going into the last thing. I'll cover it within the settings. You can actually change these per block. Remember, we were looking at color before. I could add a color key to the paragraph block. And actually say, okay, just kidding. I want to be allow you to be able to change the color of paragraph blocks, just for paragraph blocks. So I'm not going to open up the whole thing. So within here, now I can see, oh, I can actually change it just for paragraph blocks. If I go up to my heading, this custom color is not available. This color option is not available. If you want to, I could also supply a custom palette. I'm not going to do that, but could say if you wanted a specific palette that's just applied for paragraph blocks, that would be how you do it. So I think that's it for settings. I'm going to go ahead and collapse this now and move on to the styles key of our Theme.json. And now within here, I can start to define some styles. And remember our colors from up here from the palette. I can go ahead and because I know that WordPress is generating CSS variables based on these palettes, I can go ahead and start to use those within the styles application of my the style section of my Theme.json. So look at this, WP preset, this color or orange red. Nice. See what else here. So these are going to apply at the top level. So this is going to apply to everything. Let's say I only wanted, for instance, my headings to be let's make this you can do the same thing in here and say, I just want, actually, let's just make my paragraph colors black. So again, what I've done here is I've set, okay, my global kind of text color to this orange red, which preset, which was provided by WordPress and generated here to the entire text. And then actually, I can go in and target specific block, set the settings for that as well. I think we are close. I just want to show, well, if you're editing this, something that's also probably going to happen, mess this up, it should throw some kind of error here. Yeah, notice error when decoding Theme.json. So that'll let you know, okay, there's something going on because it's pretty easy to mess something up here. And I think yeah, that's just a small note is you'll likely encounter that if you're configuring keys and nested objects, trying to figure out how each of those apply. Pause here for a second. I guess the last thing I want to cover too is the concept of elements. So within here, any H2 that I have is going to be applied a specific style here. So I have the same, because H2 elements can appear outside of blocks or links, for example, these are restricted to a specific set at the moment. So let's just say text. I think this should work. So again, because this is not actually rendered as a block, it's an element and that can appear anywhere. That's something that I can target with this kind of top level element selector. everything else here you can target with the name of the block. That is most of what I wanted to cover pretty fast. But again, all of the settings that you can find here, or that I'm going over, there's way more than just color. There's spacing, typography, and all of that can be found in documentation that Birgit is, I think she shared it here. So with that, I want to, open it up and see if there are questions, if there's specific parts that anyone would want to go into in a little more detail. Happy to do that. But
Jeff,
Well,
can
thank
you
you,
go?
Jeff. Thank
Can-
you, Jeff. This was awesome. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that maybe we could just talk about layout real quick, because I think that's going to be
Sure.
a big one for 5.8.
Yeah, and I kind of skipped over just it was the first thing that was in here. Yes, layout key is a way for you to quickly define the default width of your content within WordPress or within here. So if you see here, if I don't define this layout, a lot of my content's just going to be full width by default. You can supply two values here. Content size, which is going to be the default width. Save. And you can also define, I think it's, what is it, wide size? Wide width. See, nothing happened there because I hadn't provided it. But maybe there's a better way to show that with the cover block.
Nice. I like it.
So yeah, pretty cool. You can, I mean, alignment coming together and within a unified system, reliably lay out content with starting here is pretty powerful stuff, I'd say.
Awesome. Yeah, so I shared in the chat window, if you haven't seen it, the documentation link where you can read up about the Theme.json as a whole. When you say, Daisy, that's the layout will be important for 5.8, which part of it would be, where does it come into play?
So with 5.8, with the custom template functionality that's coming, where you can basically create a custom template for an entire page or a post that would cover your header as well as your content. If you need to have these settings set for the width, especially the content size, but preferably also the wide, so that your site knows how wide it should be. Otherwise, you get kind of the effects that Jeff showed, where it was the full width of the page. It didn't have anything to contain it down to the width that you want. So for any theme that wants to use the template editor would benefit from having a Theme.json file that, even if it only has this one thing in it, it would be a good way to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's an excellent tip. Thank you, Daisy. You heard it here first. So we already got some questions in your Q&A, but I just wanted to have one question for Jeff before. That's my prerogative as a host. I get the first question. So if I understood it correctly, so up until now, the Theme.json comes into play. I had to create a lot of different places or touch a lot of different places to make a color palette work. So I had to put it in my functions PHP, and then I also have to put it in my style sheet. Is it my understanding that I don't have to do this anymore, or is it, do I still have to put it in my style sheet, or is it automatically created with when I put the color palette in the Theme.json?
It is a wonderful question. It is automatically created. This is all that style sheet looks like. So this is one of the kind of big, very exciting aspects of Theme.json, is that it's managing this for you. And then also, I think more down the line, by providing colors and styles in this way, and then also by applying the styles here, you can guarantee that those blocks are going to integrate properly. It's like the styles for those blocks are going to be more closely tied in actually in how the block is implemented. So no more writing styles that are overwriting or having to target specific nested blocks. And there's tons of complications to this, and there's a lot more room to mature and develop. But I think that's one of the parts I'm most excited about. To your point, there's one place now where I can define my palette and show how it should be applied. I don't have to go into two different places to do it.
All right. Well, let's go to the questions. Victor Kane from the beginning of the show has already put them in, and he's particularly interested in finding out about the workflow using Theme.json. So one is the best editing alternative for VS Code formatting. And then the second one was the possibility for exporting interactive selections to clipboard and code. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Maybe you understand it, Jeff, Daisy, Tammie?
Personally, so I think this is a personal choice. I'm going to start with an answer and then go. So I use VS Code. I may not be able to give the right answer there. I would be curious to know what you don't want in VS Code. And I think that's the thing. This opens up personal. I'm going to be really bad at reading the response in chat whilst talking, so I'm going to be a little bit pertinent and kind of speak first. Sorry, I'll go back to it. It's okay. Your personal choice how you write, and then you can kind of go back to it. So the thing that I did, this was my workflow or has been my workflow so far, and I think this is the thing, we're all finding our own new workflows with these new toys that we're playing with. So what I've been doing is I've been using Theme.json. I've actually been setting up variables using Sass that have been then pulling in root variables into my Theme.json so that I can pull them through. That's a weird way to do it. That's strange, but the reason being, it means I can reuse and keep things separately. But I'm sure that everybody on this call has their own little workflows that they are kind of working from. So
my approach to that was actually the opposite, that I was using my Theme.json to set all of my variables so that I didn't need Sass, which I think for those that never quite got their head wrapped around preprocessed CSS, it might be a way to simplify things for those that prefer it that way.
Awesome. I think it's what you're cozy with, right? And I think that's the thing. This can adapt to what was like your cozy blanket of coding, and you don't have to lose that yet, I think.
All right. So Victor commented on it. If I get the results I want interactively with the global settings panel on the right-hand side of the editor, can I export that to a Theme.json format?
The answer is not right now. I think there's discussion in the teams about maybe building it, but it hasn't been the highest priority because everything needs to work first before we start working on an exporter. But there are other parts that can be exported in that full site editing experience that can be exported. So I think it would be a natural progression to add the ability to do a Theme.json export.
There's
From the
definitely on the
very
road.
beginning, there were designs in Global Styles. Sorry.
Yeah.
The only reason I know is that was one thing I did partake on. There was exporting. So I have a feeling if we all wanted to place some little happy bets, there will be exporting at some point.
But if we all bet on the same thing, it's not really
Yeah,
a bet, right? Yeah, Victor, as always, you're a little bit ahead of the time. So, and from Hannah, Jan Horner from the Czech Republic, it's very hot right now there. So he has two questions. As a theme developer, one, is the Theme.json supposed to include all the styling, formatting definitions and replace the CSS style? And I think we take it one at a time. So we talked a little bit about it from my question, but would it replace? You could still do all the styling and the style sheet as you want, right?
And I think there are some things that will remain in other styling, but you could use the variables that you set or the properties that you set in your Theme.json in your CSS, so they can work together. But I don't think that Theme.json, at least right now, will not completely replace an entire site's design, especially if you have a very complex design.
Yeah, this was one of my first questions, and honestly, skepticisms early on of the proposal around this is like, CSS is great. Like, why do we want to rewrite CSS in JSON? This is, and then it slowly, I mean, other people obviously smarter than me understood this quickly. It's not about rewriting all of CSS. There's definitely going to be aspects of your site, especially if you have, like Daisy was saying, more complicated designs that will remain in CSS. But this is about creating, I think, more of the foundational elements and understanding how the blocks will interact with your styles, and having that single point of contact, I think, is most important. So I think, for me at least, it's more about the foundational elements that are going to be placed and managed this way than replacing your entirety of your styles, because CSS is great. Things like animations and transformations, and like, this is all really powerful stuff that I don't imagine really, at least in the super near future, having a big part of Theme.json. To the question about, will you be able to save and export like a Theme.json from global styles? I think this is a really important thing to keep in mind, is like, what I just showed you is kind of unnatural. Like, I don't imagine a future necessarily where theme developers are writing raw JSON. It's really, there's not a great experience for it. It's a configuration file. And so the more, to points that have already been raised, it's about, we're in this phase now because we need to kind of identify and get it to work. And then we can kind of build an ecosystem around, okay, what would a really cool UI look like to generate one of these files? Like, how would it, is it native directly to global styles? Like, how do we start to imagine those interfaces for, so that theme developers or theme designers can really get to the core of this experience too.
All right. Well, thank you. Good point. Yeah. Do you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, over time, CSS has gained so much. So I don't know about anyone else, but I had like a block.css file that was getting bigger and bigger, of supporting blocks and doing things. And something I've noticed that I can do is throw that file away, and I couldn't be happier, because what I can do now is lean into these defaults. I'm still going to have some lines of CSS that are output by whatever, a preprocessor, whatever my happy little whatever, because everyone's got their own way and we should have our own way of doing it. But it's a foundation, and it means that we're not having to work around the editor or find different ways of doing it. I set up naturally a hack file for the editor out of habit. I haven't filled it with anything yet in the latest theme I've been working on. I'm delighted if I never fill that up with anything on the next theme, because it means the new way we're doing things hasn't had me to work around that. I can just use the foundation and create a really awesome experience on top of it. And that's what we should be doing. We should be working with the editor, not having to work around it, or like using not important like it was going out of fashion to go over control of it. It's not it was this awkward middle ground we were working in, trying to make themes fit that paradigm. So yeah. Sorry for interrupting.
And I think that fits right into the next question from Jan Horner again. And he says, so as a block theme developer, should I focus from a strategic point of view on Theme.json, block styles, or block patterns? In other words, how do I differentiate? It's kind of a high level question there.
I would say all of the above. They're all important things. And your block styles are part of Theme.json, I would say. But block patterns are really a powerful partner to the Theme.json, that you can create building blocks for a site where you've got some really amazing, very specific designed elements that could be used for different things on a site. So if you're creating a commercial application that's going to go out to a wide audience, they can be more generic. But if you have a client and you're working as a freelancer or an agency where you have a site that needs to have access to these things that they're going to use more than once, patterns are fantastic way to do that, where most of the work is done for them. They don't have to reconfigure everything from the ground up every time they want to create something similar to what they've done before.
Thank you. Yeah, and Spencer McCormick in the chat window had a question. So what happens when you update the color palette or similar? For example, if you have primary and secondary colors, when you update and change the palette colors, will saved blocks have the new colors? That's an interesting question. Thank you, Spencer.
I can answer that to some extent. If you think of your palette as named colors, if you give the different hex code to the same name, it should apply to the site. But if you give it a new name, then that's a new element and it won't apply to anything that already had an old name attached to it.
There is a hefty discussion about related to this question on the naming of colors and the way that Gutenberg wants to supply a default palette or a default set of named colors so that you could reliably, what we're seeing, I think, is that I think patterns have been wanting to rely on specific colors across kind of, so you can guarantee like, oh, when cornflower shows up, it's always going to be cornflower, it's always going to be available. There's a lot of complication and nuance around it, but yeah, I think today, to answer your question, right, like Dave was saying, today, if I were to supply a value or a named value here and then change it or take it out of my palette, that would break the experience, or it would no longer be applied to that. And that's part of like the challenge. How do we reliably solve for that? How do we give theme authors the tools to figure that out? But now, if they set a custom color, if you set a custom color on an element or a block, that will remain because it's like a specific like hex value. But yeah, the class names will go away though if they're supplied by the theme.
So great discussions, and I'm probably going to share if it's one issue we'll discuss the theme team every week kind of shares all the things that are discussed and that need input from the community or other theme developers on their Make blog. So that is certainly a place to go to chime in into or find all the discussions that are happening, and then chime in the ones that you find important and that you're worried about. So Tim Bowen has the question, how does the Theme.json handle responsive sizes for font sizes especially? Responsive sizes?
by default, I'm not
You've
sure.
stumped the panelists. Yes, we did it.
I mean, you can use not just pixel values for your fonts. So
that's what I was going to say.
That helps.
Yeah.
And I think it's a work in progress. So things like responsive and breakpoints. But the now answer is you don't have to just use pixels. And Jeff just gave a great link.
I just dropped an issue in that has not seen a lot of activity around it, but the idea of media. So the first part of your question on font sizes, there are ways of calculating this where they're not pixel values tied to specific viewports. You can use you could supply a calculated value, for example, in your small that is based on a viewport size. So it's kind of like a paradigm shift or design paradigm shift of getting away from like, okay, you must be 12 pixels below 600 pixel viewport width to more of, okay, are we okay with kind of a fluid typography kind of system? That being said, there are instances where you need media queries, and that is not currently, I don't know how actively that's being worked on right now, but you know, a wonderful thing is open to contributors.
Yeah. So Patty has a comment and a question after that. Patty O'Hara, I most often develop custom themes for clients and hand them off for the clients to update the content. In playing around with the new tools, I'm excited to start using them, but don't want to give access to global styles to anyone with admin access. Will the granularity of permissions change so that I can block access to changing fonts and colors from within the admin?
I think this amazing thing happens in WordPress. Also, Jeff showed some of the control you can do. So he in the demo, there was some control that you can do. But WordPress has this history of configurability and being able to do that, be it in core or be in a plugin. But I also think we need to be a little bit cautious. This is my personal opinion here. And we need to maybe embrace allowing people to do styling. You can set boundaries, you can set branding boundaries, you can set palettes, you can set typography, but we need to move away a little bit from having such pixel fixated control in that sense, and think about safely within boundaries expression of these tools, and that people can create really amazing things. And you can maintain branding that way, and it can empower someone. These themes are becoming like style guides, and that's something that is known in the corporate world and used within that space as well. It's like a term, but it's kind of democratizing design in that sense and giving people all these tools to play with. And I think that it's a huge change in the way that we've done things, but I think it's really, really important and really, really empowering to the people that are using our themes.
That's a good advocacy for set it free. Thank you.
But you're allowed to have boundaries. I think you can set it free,
right.
but be comfortable about some boundaries. I think sometimes when we say set it free, it can be scary because we don't say you're allowed to have some boundaries. But with palettes and with these style guides, that's what you're saying. You're saying, okay, I'm making these good decisions for you, and you can choose from this plethora of good decisions. And that's kind of awesome, I think.
Yeah, I like the plea for block patterns that Daisy just a couple of minutes had, that block patterns also give you the possibility or the option to actually provide different facets of how a section can be organized on or styled or within the style design system that you build with the block add-on. So I think there is a lot of creativity that will come from that as well. So Tim Bowen has he is brave and contemplating, is it safe to use Theme.json now for a project launching in August? Would we just activate the Gutenberg plugin and add JSON file, or is there more to it? I would love to move away from our functions and editor.js method. probably as soon as possible. Yes. So what would we say to Tim?
The theme is not a block theme, as in it doesn't use HTML templates. Then I probably wouldn't put the Gutenberg plugin on a production website unless you are ready to deal with unexpected things happening. But placing your theme.json file in your classic theme on the 5.8 beta or release candidate that will be coming, I would start testing there and see if the things that you're putting in your theme.json file work with 5.8 on a classic theme. That'd be my suggestion.
I think if it's launching in August, that means 5.8 should be out. She tries to check her mental calendar. So I think test. I personally am okay about, I would consider it if it was going into a site, but I would also want to know how many users were using it, what their levels was, what they were doing, what they were going to create, and how they were going to do it. So it's a you know, it's a this is not legal advice. I feel there should be like a ticker going underneath. Not advice that I can be
don't try this at home.
But by then 5.8 should be out, so yeah.
Yeah, 5.8 comes out July 20th. That's at least scheduled for that. So we've run out of questions right now on the Q&A sessions here. Well, you're welcome to Tim. Good luck with that, and let us know. Is there more to settings to more to the setting it up besides just activating the plugin or adding the JSON file? Well, back to kind of using it in the August thing. I mean, there are already themes available that in the theme repository that use the full, that are set up for full site editing and use all the template parts and template with the blocks and header blocks and footer blocks and all that. But I'm not quite sure if that, yeah, it's be careful about the using the Gutenberg plugin in production. It always has a few hiccups there. So it wasn't the first time ever that I retreated to the last version when I had one, and had to wait till 1, 2, or 3 point releases to come out. So I'm hesitant to say do it in production. Test it as much as possible. So I have a lot of things on my screen, but not the right thing here. So it is. All right, we are pretty good time-wise. So I don't have an additional. So when we say, okay, how to get started, what was the first thing, most difficult part for you for learning, or was there a mind shift until it clicked, just to kind of get away from a fear learning something new? And was there something when you go back ages and on the Theme.json thing?
So for me, it was realizing it wasn't as hard as I maybe mentally thought it was, which is the same with learning anything. You always think it's going to be super hard, or at least with me, I read like a dev doc and I'm like, and my brain makes that noise. And then I just letting my theme be lighter, letting it take the weight of that, giving up control, which as someone that's maybe a bit of an old themer, giving up control of things, that's an interesting process to go through. But it's really important, and embracing those foundations. And when you do, there's a like mind shift of creating in the editor. That was the moment that starts, and I'm still going through the process. I think it's a process, and it's a process as these tools are evolving. We're talking about like be gentle with it in production. These tools are still evolving and working. Like if you are using these tools now before it's released, and you're going to hit bugs and report them. But that's the thing, this Theme.json also, the moment I kind of, the Jenga blocks fell in my brain, was I stopped seeing it as global styles. And I knew it wasn't just global styles, but I felt it wasn't just global styles. And this felt like it could be the backbone of my theme. And it felt like it wasn't everything of my theme, but it felt like it could be the backbone, is the best way I can describe it. And I could hang my theme from it. And we've hung our theme from functions.php wrongly, I think. So it was just that change from PHP to doing it all in the editor and creating and seeing that JSON. It just was freeing, and it's more in line with how things are made outside WordPress, which I think is delightful.
Any comments from you that you want to add, Daisy?
So when I first started working with a Theme.json file, I found that I had to, so there's a whole section called styles, and I had to like realign my thinking about what that meant, because what it's saying is there are style settings in your blocks or for your site level, if it's depending on how it's being applied. And what you're doing is configuring the defaults for it. So if I think of the Theme.json file as a defaults file, then it helped me like frame it so that I'm not necessarily replacing my CSS, depending on, I mean, I'm letting Theme.json do the heavy lifting, kind of like Tammie said, but then I can take it further if I feel like I need to or I want to. So I like thinking of it as a configuration file or a defaults file.
That's a good point, yeah. Jeff, do you have any stories from how I came about?
It's been really helpful to pair on it with people, like to talk to work on a theme with someone. I think my team at Automatic, it's like a culture of collaboration. And if you have the opportunity to say, hey, I'm having trouble with this, would you want to work on this, like with someone like that? Because it definitely can be like a head bashing kind of like, why is this not being applied? Like I literally just wrote like color green. Why is it not green? It can be so frustrating, like dealing with that. So to have someone just to look at your code and be like, oh, you missed a comma, or there's actually, you need an extra key there, is really, really helpful for something like this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, well, I think we're coming to the end of our show. This has been very interesting and inspiring. So thank you all so much. And for those who want to dive into a guided kind of testing session, Anne McCarthy, who, as you know, might know, runs the Full Site Editing Outreach program, she's about to post the 8th call for testing. And it will all be about the Theme.json file. So as soon as it's out, I will share a link in the show notes. And of course, also, if you subscribe to our Gutenberg Times newsletter, you will definitely be informed about that. So, and at this point, I only have 2 more questions for our panelists. Do you have any announcements that you couldn't get out before? And you want the people to keep in mind? And if people want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way? Tammie, you want to start?
Yeah, so I'm comatose and all of the things. I'm pretty easy to find in a good way. And I love chatting to people, so please do. I think my thing to say would be, remember all of what's happening now, you can help shape. Just because we're sat here talking about it doesn't mean we know anything more than you. It just means we've poked it and we've played around with the code. So do that, start exploring it. And it's a lot more accessible than it ever was. It's starting to be more accessible. There's more documentation than there ever was coming out. And if you care about what happens with themes, or you ever cared about what happens with themes, and maybe you could have that reignited, start to join the conversation. And I guess my final point would be, I think my hope is this sees experimentation come back to themes. I think we forgot about that a little bit. And we need to have some fun again in themes. We used to have so much fun in WordPress themes. And I look forward to not just themes that have a purpose, but just themes that are art, themes that are just wacky experiments, and start enjoying theming and make some art. I'm really excited to see what things people create and use them just for like one day even. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jeff, anything you want to have people keep in mind and how to get in contact with you?
Yeah. Contact, I'm at JFFNG. And I guess keeping in mind, I'm just building on the last thing Tammie said, find a way to have fun with it and get curious about it. Like and try it. Like there's really this fundamental, to me, fundamental tenets of learning about something, or like just how do I get curious about this thing? How do I play with it and have fun? And that's going to be the most important thing to keep at the center.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you so much for all your work on the demo. Daisy.
I am Daisy Olson on most things, Olson with an E. And I would say that as far as like what you can do as the next step, if you're interested in learning more about this, is go to, I'm pretty sure that Birgit has linked to this somewhere, the Theme Experiments repository on GitHub in the WordPress space has things that other people have done or are working on. So I love to see examples of something in action to help me learn more about it and to see what other people have done. So I would say go check out some Theme.json files in there and see what people have come up with.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Big thank you to Daisy, Jeff, and Tammie to come out today and make your time. Big thank you also for the viewers with all your great questions. I think we got a great array of it. And if you have more questions, you can always send them to me via email to Pauli, Pauli, @gutenbergtimes.com, and I'll get you the answers. And the recording of this show will be available in a few minutes on our YouTube channel. And I'll share all the links then also in the video description. And within a few days, we will have also a transcript that we will publish on the gutenbergtimes.com. So be well, goodbye, and good luck. That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.